Welcome, gun runner.
Before I get into the real intro for this video, I just need to address the madness that led up to it, because as you probably know, the subject of these amazing facts videos is voted for by you guys, my lovely viewers. In this particular case, the NEC PC-98 was up against the Enterprise Elan, VTech Laser, Apple II and Spectrum 128K to decide who got the special treatment, and within days it came down to a straight out battle between NEC's computer and Sinclair's, with the two trading first place between long stalemates. In the end I had to put out a second post asking for those who hadn't voted to go and do so, and for those who had voted for one of the other three to consider changing their votes, just to get one of them over the line. I was even starting to consider doing a coin toss to settle it. When I woke up on Tuesday morning, my deadline after the poll had been up for a week, the PC-98 was winning by just 1%, so I ended it right there. Even then, the poll reverted back to a stalemate within hours, but by then I'd started writing the video, so it was too late for all the Specky fans to get their way, unfortunately. So on to the subject of the video. The PC-9800 series, commonly shortened to PC-98, is a lineup of Japanese 16-bit and 32-bit personal computers, manufactured by NEC Electronics, most famous for the PC Engine console, between 1982 and 2000. After fighting it out against the likes of the MSX2, Fujitsu FM Towns and Sharp X68000, the PC-98 established NEC's dominance in the Japanese home computer market, which at one time accounted for over 45% of it, and had impressive lifetime sales of 18.3 million units. It was one of the last truly unique computer platforms before the behemoth that is the Windows-enabled PC-compatible swallowed them all up. As a computer that remained exclusive to Japan but still managed to have a huge influence on the industry in general regardless, it makes an ideal candidate for an amazing facts video, as I'm sure that it remains largely unknown to much of my audience. So hopefully this video will both surprise you and delight you in equal measure.
98フェローにニューモデル BX4 が登場しました。付属品をキーボードのみとシンプルな構成にし、とてもリーズナブルな価格を実現しています。 CPU は 486DX2 66MHz を搭載。旧モデルの BX3 ではオプションとなっていたウィンドウアクセラレーターを標準で装備しており、ハードディスクを増設すればすぐに Windows マシンとして使うこともできます。3モード対応の 3.5 インチフロッピーディスクドライブを2機装備。またモニターへの出力端子は DOSV パソコンに使われている15ピン3列タイプに変更されています。 BX4 をベースにしてオーバードライブプロセッサやハードディスク、増設メモリなどを拡張しながら好みのマシンに仕上げていくのも面白いですね。皆さんも BX4 で自分だけのオリジナル98を作ってみてはいかがでしょうか。
I'm sure many of you already know that the PC-98 was the replacement for the NEC PC-88, a successful 8-bit business-orientated computer that was first launched in 1981 and stayed in production until 1989, despite the arrival of its much more powerful 16-bit sibling. The PC-88 was launched in 1981 as a replacement for the NEC PC-8001 or PC-80, which had only been on the market for 2 years. Its predecessor had become the early market leader in the Japanese home micro market, and NEC were keen to build on this before new competitors started to arrive on the scene, with computers from the likes of Sharp and Fujitsu. As before, this was very much a business-focused computer, with true graphics and sound capabilities only being added to later models, mainly to try and compete with the MSX, which took the Japanese market by storm shortly afterwards. The original PC-8801 was based around NEC's own Zilog Z80 compatible UPD-780C1 processor running at 4 MHz. It had a very large, for the time, 64K of RAM and ran NEC's N88 operating system, which included the basic programming language. Later models increased the RAM as high as 512K, added Yamaha sound chips, included faster CPUs, and featured proper full colour graphics. They also started to include built-in disk drives and even hard drives and CD-ROM drives in the final models, amongst many other more minor hardware upgrades. With sales of around 2 million units, it was very much considered a success by NEC and set the groundwork for the introduction of the dominating PC-98 machines. The story of how the IBM PC standard took hold of the home computer market across the world, first as a business machine before dominating the gaming side of the micro market too, is pretty well covered. But what isn't often mentioned is how the Japanese market was the outlier in this regard, with the format not really taking hold in the land of the rising sun until after Windows 95 was released. There was one big reason for this: the Japanese language. You see, early PCs were unable to support the multiple writing systems needed to successfully display Japanese, as well as the much simplified kanji character set. And this is why Japanese electronics companies, NEC especially, were able to succeed in dominating their home market. You see, what NEC in particular did well in this regard was create computers that were mostly compatible with the IBM PC standard, using the same Intel CPUs, similar graphics and sound cards and hardware configurations, while still supporting the specific needs of the Japanese market. This meant that NEC and other companies could easily translate common PC programs, including MS-DOS and early versions of Windows, over to the PC-98 series, thus giving its users the best of both worlds. This also meant that many PC add-ons and accessories were also fully compatible with NEC's range of computers. As I mentioned in the previous entry, the PC-98 was a computer that was very much designed with the Japanese market in mind, but that's not to say that NEC didn't also look across the sea for success, as they were well aware of the booming home computer markets in North America and Western Europe, and wanted to try and get in on the action, just as other Japanese computers like the MSX and Sharp MZ series had done. And within months of launching the PC-98 in Japan, NEC also launched the APC series in North America and Europe. Although these computers could use MS-DOS and were mostly compatible with the IBM PC standard, just as the PC-98 was, the small differences in the hardware and lack of expandability to help fix this meant that some software was incompatible. This put many prospective owners off. And despite several revisions between the APC's launch in early 1983 and its discontinuation in 1986, it was never a success for the company. Rather ironically, the replacement for the original APC range was a full IBM PC-AT compatible, confusingly called the APC-4. I say confusingly because not only was this a proper PC, it wasn't even compatible with previous APC computers, despite carrying the same moniker. This isn't all though, because it seems NEC learnt nothing from this marketing blunder, as when they also came round to replacing the PC-98 with a full IBM PC compatible over 10 years later in 1987, they called it the NEC PC-98 NX, although in this case they did at least try to offer some backwards compatibility for those who wanted it, albeit rather patchy at best. One of the few demands that NEC placed on the PC-98 development team was that the new computer must have a version of Microsoft BASIC to retain compatibility with the PC-88. So in September 1981, project director Shunzu Hamada made a request to none other than Kazuhiko Nishi, president of the ASCII Corporation and father of the MSX, to rewrite his BASIC to run on the Intel 8086 processor. Nishi replied saying that he wanted to talk with Bill Gates first. And after making NEC wait for 3 months, Nishi rejected Hamada's request, saying that Microsoft was too busy with the development of the new 16-bit focused GW BASIC, and they didn't want to produce any more variants of the original Microsoft BASIC. Of course, unbeknownst to Hamada and NEC, the MSX was also under development at this time, and both Nishi and Gates did not want to support a potential rival. So Hamada tried to carry on negotiations with Nishi and Gates, and was eventually told that they could license a version of GW BASIC for their new machine. But this was no good to Hamada, as it didn't have the backwards compatibility that NEC were insisting on. With this stalemate, negotiations were ended and the team decided to try and reverse engineer N88 BASIC and create a fully compatible copy of the language for their new 16-bit machine. I think it's obvious to anyone out there listening that this wasn't strictly legal, and it wasn't long before Nishi and Gates took notice of what NEC had done. Although the new version of N88 BASIC had been completely written from scratch, it was obviously based on the same code structure, and after extensively testing NEC's new machine himself, Nishi pointed out that the bytecode of this new OS pretty much exactly matched Microsoft's. At this stage it was unclear if copyright law could be applied to the bytecode, so Nishi suggested to Hamada that NEC pay a license fee, and that a copyright notification for both Microsoft and NEC be added to N88 BASIC 86. Knowing that Nishi couldn't be nobbled, Hamada approved his demands almost immediately. As I've already alluded to, the PC-98 was the first NEC computer where its ability to play games was considered from the very beginning. So it wasn't long before the big Japanese software houses started pumping out games for it, especially after the success of its predecessor. Looking at its library, it's fair to say that it's very Japanese focused, with versions of many hugely popular franchises from its homeland like Pop Full Mail, Police Noughts, Ys, Dragon Slayer, Zack, Touhou and Valis. But rather interestingly, there's also a strong Western influence in there too, which you might not have expected. Victor Musical Industries in particular licensed and ported a number of European and American games that owners of the Atari ST and Amiga computers will be more than familiar with the likes of the 4D Sports series, Star Glider, Centurion Defender of Rome, Dungeon Master 1 and 2, Flashback, Eye of the Beholder and Sid Meier's minigames making it to the PC-98. Later on in the system's life, as the graphics and sound capabilities of the computer were improved, it also started to get conversions of hugely popular DOS games too, like Doom 1 and 2, Descent, Diablo, Gunship 2000, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Theme Park and Warcraft. So if you were put off exploring this computer due to the many inaccessible Japanese language games, you might just be surprised at the amount of familiar titles you'll find. It's been said that one of the main reasons NEC were able to dominate the Japanese home computer market in the way they did was that they constantly kept up with the competition and never sat back on their laurels, something that Western computer companies were often criticised for, in particular Commodore, who failed to update the Amiga in the way that most people wanted. If you look at a list of all the models released in the PC-98 range, you can see that NEC released at least one new variation every single year, from its conception in 1982 to the year its last model hit the market in the year 2000. It wasn't officially discontinued until 2003, by which time it had morphed into a full PC Windows compatible anyway. In fact, there are a staggering 34 different models of the computer, ranging from the original 9801 in 1982 with its 5MHz 8086 CPU and 8 colour graphics, to the 9821 RA43, some 18 years later, with its 433MHz, 32-bit Celeron CPU and true colour visuals. By identifying where the hardware needed to improve and upgrading each area without losing compatibility whilst keeping software houses on side, but asking them to provide input into this, NEC managed to keep the PC-98 range on the market for over 20 years, longer than any other single manufacturer computer and second only to the IBM PC compatible in the overall rankings. I think it's quite well known that the Japanese software market has always included an abnormally high amount of adult content. Soft porn games, hentai and eroge have always proved popular in this region, and you can find such material on every single Japanese system of the era, not just computers either, as even consoles like the PC Engine and 3DO played host to such questionable material. PC-98 was certainly not alone in this regard. In fact, it's fair to say that it very much led the way in this category, partly thanks to its popularity in the market, but also because of the impressive graphical capabilities of later models. The adult-themed games released for the PC-98 range from fairly tame stuff like the Wrestle Angel series and various dating simulators to more hardcore stuff like Strip Mahjong and entire CD-ROMs of straight-up pornographic images. In fact, this category of software became so ingrained within the PC-98's library that it continued to be released for the machine well after it was discontinued by NEC themselves, often sold specifically by specialist adult stores. You can be certain that we never would have seen such things in the West outside of illegal public domain discs. It certainly never would have been sold in regular stores. Programs like Strip Poker and Centerfold Squares by Artworks was about as risque as it got. Interestingly, despite NEC ploughing their own fallow with the PC-98 range, thus avoiding the ridiculously competitive PC-compatible market until the early 90s, there were other companies who admired what they were doing and decided that imitation really was the best form of flattery. Most prominent of these was Psycho Epson, who manufactured and marketed a range of PC-98 clones between 1987 and 1995, as well as a range of compatible peripherals. Epson already had somewhat of a reputation for building low-cost computers, and this continued with these clones. Low cost also meant low profit, but Epson overcame this by shipping volume. However, when it came to their range of PC-98 clones, this battle plan didn't quite work. The press of the time was extremely negative about Epson's machines, criticising the poor build quality, lack of features and low specs. So even though these Epson clones massively undercut the computers offered by NEC, people weren't swayed and were more interested in quality than price. Epson weren't the only ones to get in on the act either, as in 1990 a company called AST Research released the Dual Station 386 SX16, which was both PC-9801 and IBM PC compatible. However, this also failed, but this time it was mainly down to poor marketing and bad retail distribution, with the machine being largely unknown. Sharp, Sanyo and Psychosha were also developing their own PC-98 clones, but all gave up after legal battles with NEC. An executive of Sanyo said, "NEC paid far more attention to its copyright than we had imagined. We decided that the loss of our corporate image would be greater than its profit, and cancelled the 98 compatible machine business." Although the PC-98 was still riding high, in November 1992 NEC introduced their very first full IBM PC compatible, the PC-9821. This mid-range Windows machine contained an Intel 386 SX processor, a CD-ROM drive, 16-bit PCM audio playback, MS-DOS 5A and Windows 3A. At the start of the following year, they also introduced low-end and high-end Windows PCs too, called the 98 Fellow and 98 Mate respectively. Another all-in-one desktop PC soon followed, called the 98 Multi. This was very much the start of the PC-98's migration into being a full Windows PC compatible. But by moving away from their own native hardware and into the Wild West multi-PC sector, they soon encountered some pretty stiff opposition. There was already a huge price war going on in this sector, and this left NEC in a position they had never found themselves in before, not being able to choose the price they wanted to charge for their hardware and instead being led by market forces. Thankfully, due to their huge experience in building home computers, NEC were able to quickly adopt various industrial standards and reduce costs greatly. From 1993 to 1995, the PC-98 adopted 72-pin SIMs, the 3.5-inch 1.44MB floppy disk format, IDE storage devices, VGA screen modes, 2D GUI acceleration GPUs, Windows sound systems, PCI slots, and PCM CIA card slots. NEC also started outsourcing the manufacturing of motherboards for the very first time too, mostly to Taiwanese companies such as ECS and GVC. However, this soon encountered another big issue aside from the cost of hardware: the control of software. NEC were no longer able to influence developers or work with them to develop the hardware further. There was no longer any loyalty left in this side of the industry. With all software being available for Windows-based machines, there was also no pull towards the NEC brand other than blind loyalty. And in 2003, they decided to completely discontinue the PC-98 range and focus on other sectors, to much sadness from their fervent user base. One of the most important aspects of a successful system is what kind of legacy it leaves on the industry. And it's long been argued that the NEC PC-98 had the most important legacy of any Japanese computer. And some say this extends across all video game systems too. This legacy is split into two very different but equally important parts. Firstly, there is its importance as the first computer to feature a full kanji character set. This is said to have not only made home computing more accessible for Japanese speakers, but also encouraged the development of Japanese specific software. But not only that, as it's also been said that this influenced the evolution of the kanji language outside of home computing, with each complementing the other. It's also been revealed through research and interviews in Japanese magazines that the PC-98 got more people into programming and software development than any other computer. The simplicity and user-friendliness of the computer positively encouraged it in fact. It's been said that the phenomenon that was the Nintendo Famicom would have never had the impact on the industry that it did without the PC-98, as the computer was directly responsible for the careers of the system's best designers and developers, and indeed the creation of its best games. When you lay it out like that, it's pretty hard to think of another home computer that had the same kind of impact on its local industry. Perhaps only the Sinclair ZX Spectrum in the UK rivals it.
Lemon という字が書けますか？たった5文字のアルファベットが日本語なら35画。これが日本語の世界。7000字を超える膨大な日本語の処理を高速で行う仕組みを NEC は最初から本体に組み込みました。英語での処理を前提にしたパソコンとの思想の違いがここにあります。日本語のスクロールスピードを比較するとご覧の通り、出発が違う、思想が違う。98誕生から10年、ソフトウェアは1万5000種、国内シェアは第1位。速さは力をモットーにあらゆるニーズにお応えしてきた NEC から日本語をさらに使いやすくした98フェロー、98メイト新登場。いつもあなたのそばに。
NEC.
And that rounds up my look at 10 amazing PC-98 facts. Which one of these fabulous facts was your favourite, or can you think of any other tantalising tidbits of trivia that I didn't include? We always love to hear the thoughts and views of my audience, so please get typing in that comments section. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons and YouTube backers in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Grady Haynes, Mitchell Valentino, Seth A. Robinson, Carl Olsen, Dos Gamerman, Sonic Mania 909, Paul Daniel, Andrew McKay, Retro Resolution, Matt Standish, James Taylor, Trogdor the Burninator, Mins, 8-Bit Guy, Luke MC, Ben P. Stein, Tabby Kitsune, Daniel Skoronsky, and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now, where you can get access for host-extra content including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.